The wind blew in from the west like a slow-breathing ghost, stirring dust and sorrow across the barren outpost called Mercy's Hollow. The sky had turned to iron, cracked earth groaned beneath wagon wheels. Men spit tobacco and eyed the auction. Like buzzards over a drying carcass, Colt Harrow stood apart from them, hat low, hands tucked deep in a frayed coat, boots dirt-stitched from months of walking nowhere. The leather straps on his saddlebag had long since frayed. The pistol at his hip hadn't seen daylight in 5 winters. He wasn't there to buy anything, not until he saw that wagon. It creaked in behind 2 snorting mules, wood-grayed and blistered from old flame. Its wheels shuddered like a dying prayer. Inside, 6 figures huddled, silent, hooded, heads bowed. Even the wind hushed when it rolled past them. The auctioneer didn't bother with charm. "Runaways?" he barked, unclaimed. From a burned-out orphanage near the bluffs. "Government ain't sending wagons for useless mouths might be worth something to someone." The crowd snorted. A merchant laughed. One man suggested lighting the wagon on fire just to save time. Colt's jaw ticked. He didn't move. Not when the bids started. Not when they stalled at $5 silver. Not even when the children began to shift, slow, uneasy, like animals. Scenting blood, then a hand moved, small, trembling, just a flicker of pale wrist beneath a wool hood. The kind of gesture you'd miss if you weren't looking with your soul, Colt stepped forward, $6 silver hit the dust. The crowd went quiet, No one challenged him, He walked to the wagon slow, steady. The driver stepped back, relieved. As Colt approached, one child flinched. Another curled tighter into shadow, He didn't say a word. Didn't ask their names, Instead, he loosened the bolt on the door, gently pulled it open, and crouched. A warm, sour stench rose from inside, old fear and mildew and something deeper, harder to name. He reached out a hand. The youngest, a girl no older than 7, crawled forward, still hooded. Her knees scraped wood. Her fingers fumbled. For the edge, Colt lifted her down like glass. She didn't look up. He helped the others, one by one. A silent line of thin limbs and cracked lips, no shoes. Rope burns, someone's shirt used as a bandage. One boy gripped a bundle of feathers in both hands. Like they were the only thing left holding him together, by dusk, they were miles away. Camp set beneath a dying tree, fire flickering low, supper nothing but hardtack and river water. The children sat in a ring, close but not touching. They hadn't spoken all day. Neither had Colt. He watched them from across the flames, whittling a stick into nothing. Somewhere nearby, an owl called once and was answered. The girl he'd lifted down sat furthest from the fire. Her hood still covered most of her face. She hadn't eaten. Just stared at the orange glow like it might reach across the night and bring back whatever she'd lost. Then she moved, crawled forward, paused at the edge of the light. Colt didn't blink. His knife kept moving slowly. She raised her face, just enough for the fire to touch her chin. And then, in a voice raw and small and coated in ash, she said, "Papa?" The knife slipped from Colt's hand. Silence fell so deep even the wind bowed its head. His breath caught. Not in his throat, in his bones. The word hung there, not shouted. Not sobbed, just offered. The girl blinked at him. Shadows danced on her cheekbones. And in the flicker of flame, Colt saw something he hadn't let himself see in years. The curve of her nose. The tilt of her mouth. The exact sound of his daughter's voice the last time she'd said goodnight. But that was impossible. Wasn't it? He stood. Too fast. The world tilted sideways. She flinched. Colt turned away. Stumbled into the dark like a man punched in the gut by a ghost. He walked until the fire was just a whisper. Until the only thing he could hear was the pounding in his ears and the cracking of his own ribs beneath the weight of what might be true. The wind rose again, this time. It carried the faintest sound of weeping. The next morning, frost clung to the grass like ash on bones. Colt rose before the sun. His body ached like it always did after sleep, though he hadn't slept. He'd sat with his back against a crooked pine, boots half buried in cold dirt. Watching the sky slowly bleed from black to gray, the fire had gone out. He hadn't moved to rekindle it. The children were curled like roots near the wagon. One of the older boys had draped his own coat over two of the smaller ones. The girl who'd whispered Papa lay motionless, her arms tucked beneath her ribs like she was still protecting something that could be taken. Colt stared at her for a long time. She hadn't spoken again. He hadn't gone near ... by mid-morning. They were moving, no trail, just instinct. South, toward the canyon valley where the trees were thick enough to disappear inside. The wagon creaked behind him, every wheel groan sounding like it might be the last. They'd salvaged oats from an abandoned homestead and a few dried roots from beneath. A dead woman's garden. The children still hadn't asked his name. It was the third night when the storm broke. Rain came without warning, like grief does. Hard and fast and without pity. Thunder galloped across the hills. Colt pulled the wagon beneath an outcropping, covering it with canvas and prayer. The fire wouldn't light. One child whimpered until another squeezed their hand in the dark. Colt's hands trembled as he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the carved music box. It hadn't played since the fire. He turned the rusted crank. Nothing. He turned. Again, and then, like a memory slipping through a crack in time, it sang. A soft, broken tune. Notes missing. Wood splintered. But enough. The youngest child pressed her head to the wagon wall and began to hum along. Her voice was cracked and off-key, but she knew the melody. Colt looked away. His throat had closed. That was when the woman came. No one saw her arrive. One moment the rain ruled everything. The next, she was there, sitting at the edge of the fireless circle like a ghost made flesh. She wore wet leather, dark braids, and silence like armor. Her face was sharp, one eye covered with a cloth band, her hands dark with old scars. She said nothing. Didn't flinch when lightning carved the sky. Just watched them, all of them, like she already knew each one. Colt reached slowly for his pistol. She raised a hand. Then she spoke. You carry children that do not belong to you. Her voice was neither threat nor question. It was a truth dropped like a stone into deep water. Colt didn't answer. The children froze. The one-eyed woman looked at them. Looked at the feathers tied to the boy's belt. Looked at the stitch. Marks across the girl's collar. Where did you find them? She asked. Colt's jaw worked. Auction. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that. Then turned to the boy with the feathers. Your name. He didn't speak. She stood, crossed the fire pit, and knelt before him. Her voice softened. These feathers, they are mourning feathers, for the dead, but they're tied wrong. Someone did not know the way. The boy looked at the ground. She took one feather in her hand, turned it upright. This is how we grieve with honor. The boy's eyes brimmed. He nodded once. The woman stood again and turned to Colt. I am called Juania. My people are gone. These children. They were taken from more than just home. Colt's mouth was dry. You know them? I know what was done to them. Wind. Howled again outside the rocks. Juania moved to the wagon and leaned close, her hand resting on the boards like she could feel the memories in the wood. This wagon came from the mountains, she said. From the place they burned. She looked over her shoulder. A church, a mission. They called it God's place, but it held chains and fire. Colt blinked. He could hear it now, screams that weren't in the wind. Nails pulled from boards, footsteps running. His daughter's face. No, not his daughter, not anymore. Or maybe never. Why did she call me that? He asked, voice low. Juania. Turned. Because you look like someone she trusted? He couldn't breathe. That night, Juania stayed with them. No fire. Just warmth from her presence. She sat beside the children, letting them sleep near her without asking. She spoke softly, in a language Colt couldn't understand. The girl who'd whispered, "Papa," curled against her shoulder and didn't cry. Colt sat alone, on the far edge of the hollow at dawn. He found something in the wagon he hadn't put there, a tin box wedged between old planks. Inside, 3 items, a church bulletin, dated the same day his wife and daughter had died, a stitched doll, one eye torn off, and a photograph, blurred by smoke and time, his wife, holding a child that wasn't his, standing beside a man Colt had never seen before. His hands trembled as he put the photo down. Behind it, in faded ink, were words in his wife's handwriting. If this ever finds you, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you. I didn't know what they were doing until it was too late. Forgive me if you can. Colt lowered the tin. The wind moved through the hollow like a breath held too long. From behind him. Wania spoke. Your past is not the only thing you buried. The truth does not stay buried forever. He turned. Her one eye burned steady. You can carry them, she said, or you can carry guilt, but not both. Colt said nothing. But his shoulders rose, then dropped like something unspoken had been laid down at last. The girl stirred in the wagon. She looked at him, half asleep, and smiled. Not. A child's smile. Not yet, but something close. The first rider came at dusk. Colt saw him as a shadow against the sinking sun, wide-brimmed hat, coat too clean for the trail, rifle at his back. Behind him, 5 more followed, silhouettes wrapped in dust and heat, no words. Just hooves. And menace. Colt didn't move from the stump he was splitting. Didn't reach for the revolver strapped beneath his coat. Not yet. He watched the riders slow, watched the leader dismount. His boots hit the earth with a practiced thud. While Nia stepped from the trees. She stood between the children and the path, body still, wind tugging at her braids like a warning. The lead rider took 2 steps forward and lifted his chin. His eyes were pale gray, the kind that never blinked when fire took a house. His voice was silk on steel. You've got something that belongs to the mission. Colt's voice came low. The mission's gone. The rider smiled thin. Not what? I asked. Colt stood. Behind him, the children began to stir. The smallest clutched the one-eyed doll. The boy with the feathers reached for Wania's hand. The rider stepped closer. Their property, Harrow. Rescued from savages, brought to be tamed. Then you came along with your bleeding heart and $6 silver thinking that made you a father. Colt didn't answer. The rider's hand fell to his holster. Last chance. Walk away. We'll forget you were ever here. Colt took a breath that scraped his lungs. Then he spoke. You don't get to tell them who they are. Not anymore. The silence was shattered by the rider's whistle. The others spurred forward. Colt moved without thinking. One hand grabbed the rifle by the fire pit. The other swept the children behind the wagon. Wania was already moving. Pushing the older girl toward the trees, shots rang out sharp and dirty. Like thunder tearing fabric, Colt dropped to one knee and fired once. Not at flesh, but at the wagon's iron latch. The chain holding its side snapped. He shouted. Run! The children scattered like wind-blown leaves. Vanishing into the brush, Wania turned once, met Colt's eyes, then turned back and disappeared after them. The riders surged. Colt rose, took another shot, missed, then ducked as a bullet tore through the tree behind him. He dove, rolled, landed hard, blood in his mouth, pain in his shoulder. But his hands still worked. He fired again. One horse bucked. A rider screamed. Another shot, closer now, grazed his side. He fell behind the wagon, breath ragged. Everything spinning, then footsteps, close, Colt lifted his revolver just as the lead rider stepped into view. Their eyes locked. The man smiled. Your wife begged too. The trigger clicked. But Colt didn't pull. Instead. The girl, his girl, stepped out from behind the wagon, arms shaking, voice like smoke. She's dead because of you. The man turned, too slow, too proud. The girl raised a rusted pistol Colt hadn't seen her take. She fired, The shot went wild, but it was enough. Colt lunged, grabbed the man's collar, drove him back into the dust. They wrestled in silence, grunting, fists meeting flesh. A knife flashed. Colt caught it with his hand, blood pouring. He wrenched it away, then froze. The man's hand was bare, but on his ring finger, a thin gold band, the one Colt had carved for his wife. He looked into the man's eyes, and saw nothing human. Colt's hand moved, not to kill, but to let go. He stood, . The rider gasped once, then reached for his weapon, *. Colt turned, and the girl shot again. This time the bullet struck home. Silence followed, not the silence of death, but the silence of something unspoken being honored. Juania emerged from the woods, the other children trailing behind her like wounded shadows. She knelt beside Colt. You did not run. Colt didn't answer. He was staring at the sky, clouds parting, a thread of gold spilling across the horizon. Juania touched his shoulder. Now they know what a father is. They buried the rider beneath the roots of the scorched tree. No words, no grave. Just earth and memory. That night Colt sat alone with the tin box beside him. The photo was still there, his wife's face smiling in lies. The letter. The doll. He took out his knife and carved a new name into the box's lid. Not hers, not his. There's ... by morning. They were moving again, but not to run. They reached a clearing by the river bend, land still whole, soil untouched by fire. Colt stood beneath the wide oak and began to hammer fence posts into the ground. The children helped. No one spoke, but when the girl handed him a nail, she smiled. A real one this time. No ashes in it. That evening they built a fire. Not for warmth, for light. Colt held the music box in his lap. It no longer played. But he cranked it anyway. And the children leaned in close, just to hear the rhythm of the silence. He looked at them, 6 lost souls. Not his blood, not his burden, but still, somehow,